Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving headfirst into the fascinating, honestly, almost forensic mystery of our own biology. We are going to look closely at how our skeleton radically transforms from a shape-shifting, flexible entity early in life, all the way into the rigid adult frame that we rely on every single day. It's a story of an absolute architectural marvel happening right inside of you. And I promise, by the end of this, you will never look at a human skeleton the same way again.
Here's our roadmap for today. We'll cover the living skeleton, 2 ways to build bone, the incredible shrinking skeleton, how bones grow longer, what shapes your skeleton, and finally, the dental exception.
Section 1. The Living Skeleton. Uncovering the living composite. Let's get right into it.
When most people think of bones, they kind of just picture dry, static relics, right? Like the props you'd see in a museum or a Halloween display. But the reality is entirely different. We have to start with the core process, ossification. Essentially, this is the method by which bone tissue replaces other tissues during development. The absolutely crucial word there is replaces. It is a highly dynamic, ongoing process of tissue substitution. Our bones are not just some dead scaffolding that our muscles are draped over. They are a highly active living material. Think of your bone as a brilliant, dynamic, composite material that perfectly balances 2 totally opposite forces. On one side, we've got the organic component. This is primarily collagen fibers, and it gives the bone its necessary flexibility. On the flip side, we have the inorganic component, which is made up of hydroxyapatite crystals, giving the bone its remarkable stiffness and strength. It's an incredible partnership. Without both of these working together, our skeleton would either be too brittle and literally shatter, or it'd be way too rubbery to even hold us up.
Section 2. 2 ways to build bone. The body's blueprints.
The human body is basically a master builder, but it doesn't just use one single blueprint to construct our frame. There's a really crucial contrast here between 2 primary mechanisms. First up, endochondral ossification. This is the most common method. Here, bones are actually first preformed in cartilage. That cartilage acts like a temporary mold, which is then gradually replaced by actual bone tissue. Most of your skeleton develops exactly this way. But contrast that with intramembranous ossification. In this process, bone develops directly from fibrous membranes. It just completely skips the cartilage stage. This direct-to-membrane method is highly specific and is reserved for essential protective parts like the cranial vault of the skull and the clavicle.
Section 3. The incredible shrinking skeleton. The forensic timeline.
This is where it gets wild. This developmental process reads exactly like a biological clock, and it's a timeline that forensic experts rely on heavily. You see, ossification doesn't just happen all at once. It builds this continuous timeline of growth, beginning in individualized centers that follow a highly predictable sequence. From the 11th to 12th week in the womb to the day you're born and finally into adulthood, these centers are constantly fusing together over time.
Let's actually break these numbers down because they are truly staggering. We kick off our fetal development with a massive 806 distinct centers of bone growth. Think about that for a second. By the 11th or 12th week in the womb, there are over 800 separate biological construction sites working overtime to build your skeletal frame.
But here is the crazy, counterintuitive part. As we grow physically larger and taller, our skeletal pieces actually decrease in number. By the time we're born, those 806 centers have already reduced to about 450. And ultimately, by the time we reach adulthood, all these various centers coalesce and unite until we're left with just 206 bones. You quite literally have fewer bones right now than when you were a baby.
So what does this all mean practically? Well, it's absolutely fascinating. Because this coalescing of bone centers happens in such a strict, reliable order, forensic experts can use this exact sequence to estimate a person's age. If a forensic anthropologist examines a skeleton and sees exactly which centers have fused and which haven't, they can essentially read that skeleton like a biological timestamp.
Section 4. How bones grow longer. The mechanics of height.
Okay, so we know the timeline, but how does our skeleton physically stretch out to make us taller? Immature long bones manage their growth across 3 main zones. First, you have the diaphysis, which is just the central shaft of the bone. Second are the epiphyses, the end portions where secondary ossification centers pop up after we're born. And finally, the really critical third zone, the metaphysis. You probably know this better as the growth plate, which is made of hyaline cartilage. The metaphysis is literally the engine of your height. It sits right between the shaft and the ends, and length is systematically gained right there as cartilage is continuously replaced by bone.
But as we all know, this vertical expansion doesn't last forever. It eventually hits a hard biological stop. This happens when something called epiphyseal union occurs. Sometime in early adulthood, the cartilage in that growth plate is fully replaced by bone, firmly fusing the central shaft and the ends together. This union marks the absolute end of our physical growth in height. It's the reason you eventually stop needing larger shoe and pant sizes. Those growth plates are closed for good.
Section 5. What shapes your skeleton? The variables of ossification.
Now, while that sequence of ossification is incredibly reliable, the clock doesn't tick at the exact same speed for everyone. The rate and timing of your bone formation are heavily influenced by a complex mix of inherent demographics and external environmental factors. On the demographic side, we see variations based on race, sex, and geographical distribution. But on the environmental side, things like your nutrition, your physical activity levels, your specific food habits, and any presence of hormonal or metabolic disorders, they directly impact how and when your bones develop.
To give you a clear idea of how this actually plays out in the real world, consider geography and sex. Research shows that ossification generally occurs earlier in Indian populations compared to Western ones. Plus, regardless of where you look geographically, females typically mature skeletally faster than males do. It just goes to show how wonderfully diverse human biology can be, even while following the exact same basic blueprints.
Section 6. The dental exception. The ultimate biological timekeepers.
Let's pivot away from bones for a second and look at the mouth. When we examine skeletal development, teeth offer us this incredibly reliable, almost uncorrupted backup clock. Even though teeth aren't technically bone, they are similarly mineralized tissues that follow their own very strict developmental rulebook. This process starts deep in the womb, right around the 4th or 5th month, with the formation of a cellular tooth germ. From there, the crown of the tooth forms and calcifies first, tucked safely away within the alveolar cavities of the jaw. And only after that crown is totally secured does the root formation follow.
But here is the real kicker, and why this dental development is so important to everything we've talked about today. We just saw how bone ossification can be sped up or slowed down by nutrition, health, and environment, right? Well, teeth are stubborn. Dental formation is highly resistant to those environmental changes. Because of this incredible resilience, teeth are the preferred, absolute foolproof method for estimating a child's age. They just keep ticking away steadily, giving experts a crystal clear timeline even if external health factors have completely altered the rest of the skeleton's growth.
As we wrap up this explainer, we've seen how our framework transforms from 806 fetal centers of cartilage and membrane into 206 rigid adult bones. We've seen how they're shaped by our environment, our demographics, and our daily lives. So I want to leave you with this thought to ponder. If our bones are a living, evolving biological composite that reacts to our habits, our nutrition, and our activity, what story is your skeleton writing right now? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep learning, and I'll catch you on the next one.